How's it going, guys? Today I'm going to be showing you how to make speed garage like Different. Different is from Germany and he's been absolutely taking over the speed garage scene. All of his releases on Spotify are all bangers. Pretty much every new release he's coming out on Spotify is a banger. He's doing loads of official remixes and some of his own stuff as well. I spoke to him briefly on Instagram as well when his track Different came out, and he's a really nice bloke. So if you haven't heard his stuff yet, go check him out. Anyway, here's a remake of his Zeros remix. Great, so let's start with the intro. Cool, so the first thing you'll hear is this organ bass. So let's look at the MIDI, and yeah, it's really short. So as you can see, a normal sort of organ bass would be like this. But he's made the notes really short. And it makes it more bouncy. It sort of saves a major bass for in the drop. Obviously, if this was like legato, then the drop's not going to hit as hard. Like still hits, but not as hard as this. So yeah, that's quite a clever move that he's done with that. Let's have a look at the sound. So it's made in the Korg M1 plugin and is the Organ 2 preset. So basically, yeah, you just got to go load, prog, organ, organ 2, solo it, and then clear off some of these effects. So like drag the dry wet of the hall down. And if you go to insert effects, then turn off the stereo chorus and then turn off the hall reverb. Yeah, and then I've got this EQ. As you can see, I'm like really smashing it high. I've used just a few different bell curves and stuff like that, and I've taken out all the low end from about 240 using this sort of sweep. Without that, it's going to be too bassy. As I said earlier, we're sort of saving the bass for the drop. Cool. If you don't have the M1, but you have one of my packs. So in the Speed Garage Volume 2 pack, I actually have the bass Different organ. So it does sound slightly different because it's got some different processing, but this is what it sounds like. So this is basically the M1 bass, similar to what he did in one of his other tracks. So yeah, if you haven't got the original M1, then yeah, you can use the Speed Garage Volume 2 pack if you have that. Cool, so next we have the other bass. And yeah, this MIDI is literally the same, I think, as this, but obviously it's elongated. It's been dragged out. But yeah, the MIDI is actually the same. So you can drag that on there, legato it, and then pitch it up, not that much. Okay, yeah, so the rhythm's actually been changed a little bit. So it's the same notes, but the rhythm's been changed. Cool, so if you have a look at the Serum patch, it's the Zeros Reese. So as you can see in oscillator A, we have a saw wave, detuned positively plus 27, and then oscillator B is minus 27. They're both then pitched down by 2 octaves. These are then running through this filter. Turn that off. You need to obviously go to normal, MG low 18, bring the cutoff all the way down, bring the drive up to about 25%, the res to about 50. I then got this macro here, drag that onto the cutoff, and then dragging that up to control how much high end's coming in. When you're on the filter, make sure you select A, B, and also this here. This basically means the higher up the note, the more it's going to open or close. We've also got a little bit of noise, so we've gone for analog up pink, although this is quite subtle if I just solo it. It's also changed with the notes because we selected it on notes mode and pitched it all the way up 64 semitones. In terms of effects, we've got this dimension, which is at 30% with the size being at 23. Got this EQ, but it's not actually doing anything, so you can ignore that. We've got this distortion, so drive of 22 and a mix of 29. This filter is actually off, and lastly we have this reverb with just a tiny bit of wet at 10%. Great, so next we have the drums. We've got this kick. Yeah, this is a really heavy kick. Great, so then on top of the kick, we have these top loops. So these actually have different processing compared to the drop and the build. So in the build, we have these auto filters. So they're taking out the low end, and this auto filter is taking out the top end, but it's slowly fading in. If you want speed gauge drums like these, then check out my new pack, Speed Gauge Volume 3. It has tons of loops, one-shots and effects for making 6 speed gauge just like this. It's important when you're making speed gauge is that you cut out the drums just before the drop and then put in a little shout. So for example, in this case, it's a vocal, or you could have like gunshots or effects. Sometimes you can cut out the bass as well, so you could cut that out. In this case, he's left it in, but it still sounds good. Well, you could actually cut it out. Maybe he cuts it out. So yeah, my mistake, he actually does cut it out. So yeah, it's good to always leave a nice breather just before a drop, and that means the drop has more impact when it hits. And that obviously moves on to the next bit, which is the effects. So we just have this rising effect, which is white noise, into this ragger effect, and then that falls into this downer. That downer has a kickstart. It's basically just sidechain to the kick, so that it doesn't sort of get in the way of the drop. So if you don't have that on, it's going to sort of be too crowded. See before I'm with it. It almost works as like a hi-hat when it has that really heavy sidechain. This bass also has a sidechain on it, which is basically the same but a 90% mix, so it helps the kick punch through. In terms of effects and stuff, I literally don't really mix down my tracks that much. You might be looking at it like, where's all like the EQs and where's all that stuff? But if you have a look at all these channels, there's a bit of reverb on this. There's not actually any effects, like even on the bass, this group, that's not even on. So there's literally no effects. When you use the right sounds, so you use the right samples, the right bass presets, like all that sort of shit, or even like bass loops, like when you use the right stuff, you don't need to like spend ages EQing. When I first started producing, I used to spend so much time like EQing this, like chucking all these like different choruses, like reverbs, like playing for hours with the reverbs, yeah, tiny little things that no one actually notices. And at the end of the day, a lot of the time you're tweaking all these different stuff is because you're not happy with how the track sounds. And the reason for that is because it's just a shit track. So sometimes it's better to just like cut your losses, take an outsider's perspective, think, is this track actually good? Or do I keep coming back to it to tweak stuff because it kind of sucks? And if it does kind of suck, you're never going to be able to polish it so much that it's actually a good track. You might as well cut your losses and move on to the next. Great guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that video. I will see you next week for another. Cheers.